Conversations from the Cave is a raw self-help podcast dedicated to discussing men's issues. From pornography to parenting, from religion to real life, from learning to loving. We discuss the real issues that affect real men every day. Join us each week for powerful, revealing Conversations from the Cave. Now your host, Kurt Kennedy.
This is Conversations from the Cave. I am your host, Kirk Kennedy. Tonight we're joined by attorney LaTanya Moore, who will be discussing with us issues related to family challenges when it comes to legal issues for men and women when families have conflict. We thought this might be a great opportunity to talk about positive ways to deal with conflict, and then also to provide tools for individuals when they're going through challenges that don't seem to be resolved quite easily. Ms. Moore, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's really very interesting when we spoke before how you have a very direct passion for the type of law that we're going to be talking about tonight. Can you sort of share with us a little bit of your experience and how you came to be so passionate about the cause of dads and families and dealing with legal issues related to dads?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting. For probably about I can clearly remember about 5 or 6 years. It actually started. I started to notice this erosion in value that was placed on fatherhood. And, you know, it's really interesting because I'm a single mom. My son is an adult now, but, you know, his father was not in his life. And so it's always interesting that, you know, when I speak with people who either know the story or they know that, they're really shocked when I say that I'm really an advocate for fathers. I really believe that good fathers that are trying to be a part of their child's life should be. And I say that from the perspective of someone that has seen the other side of that and how there's just truly a lack. And so I began to ask myself, you know, what is it that I can do? What can I do within my power to make sure that there are ways that these gentlemen can be a active part of their children's lives and do what I can to make sure that relationship remains intact. And so there are several different parts to this, but the bottom line is that at the end of the day, children have two parents, and you actually need two parents to create a life. And I'm just a firm believer that you really need that stability. And so that really got me passionate about it. And so when I started to look at family law and how the best interest of the child standard really has, for years, for decades, for generations, really has just been not necessarily the best interest of the child per se, because it's been skewed towards the mother is the nurturer, so therefore the child should be with the mother, and that's the end of it. And then fathers are left to have to fight for basic things like visitation, like time on the holidays, or being able to be an active part of the school life and all of those things that, when we look at society as a whole, a lot of these areas are the places where kids have the most challenges. And so that really prompted me to just say, well, you know what, I'm just going to take a stand, and I am going to be an active contributor in changing this narrative.
That's a very powerful approach. One of the things that I think I've heard you say, and I applaud you, is that you actually see it in your own life. So a lot of times ministry starts at home. You start to realize that there are challenges that can actually be, even though you're an equipped and very competent woman, that there is a place, there is a role for fathers in the relationship with their children. When you look at the ideal, what does that look like to you without conflict? First.
It's really interesting because for me, my view of an ideal or what I know society calls an intact family is really a family where there is a harmonious relationship between the parents. There is a harmonious relationship between the parents, meaning with each other, and then collectively and separately with their child. That doesn't mean that doesn't have to mean that we're talking about two people that are married. It doesn't have to mean that we're talking about two people that, meaning the parents, that are in relationships together. So to me, this ideal relationship is a relationship where every interaction, every relationship component has a healthy essence behind it. And so I think that this can be achieved even for parents that are no longer in a relationship together.
That's interesting. Would you say that the ability to get to that positive relationship, how does one get there? Is it through effective communication? Is it through time spent? What are the sort of give us some guidelines on how to accomplish what you feel is an ideal family?
Well, I think the starting point is to not be selfish. The starting point is taking ownership of the things that you've done to contribute to the demise of either the parent-parent relationship or the parent-child relationship. The second thing is forgive. You don't have to forget. You don't have to be in a relationship with this person. But you have to ask yourself, how would I want my child to view me? And then you have to work from that, because the reality of things is that if I have an animus against my child's father, the child should never know that. They should never see it. They should never know it, because what happens is you create a rift between either yourself and the child or the other parent and the child. And so at some point it's going to blow up in your face. So you have to really be mindful. You have to start at a place of saying, this is someone who is the other parent, just like I'm the parent. And I know that it's healthy for them to have a relationship with the other parent, just as it's healthy for them to have a relationship with me. And then you have to take yourself out of it. You have to take your feelings out of it, because oftentimes the animus between the parents have nothing to do with the child. There are residual hurt feelings, unresolved relationship issues, and the child is merely being used as a pawn to hurt that other parent one way or another. And so I think that we have to start at that place of owning up to our contributions, our negative contributions, and then after that we have to forgive.
You brought up that word forgiveness. In unresolved differences, that's probably the first step in bringing some resolution and some closure to those wounds that linger after a relationship's demise. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And, it even goes a step further, because you have to say as a parent, and I'm a firm believer in this, you have to be able to say, regardless of how I feel about the other parent, I am not going to restrict my child from being with them. And that's a really tough place. It's a very, very tough place to be. But it's a very realistic place if you want a well-rounded, happy child. Not to say that a child can't be well-rounded and happy if that's not the case, but when there's continued conflict between the parents, there's an issue there. And the child is going to always see that issue. They're going to always know that it's an issue.
Would you call that parent alienation syndrome?
Not really, because usually the parent, when you're talking about parent alienation, that's when you make a concerted effort to keep that child, like you just take the child away from the parent, and then you make sure you plant these seeds of discord, and then the child won't even want to be a part of the parents, want anything to do with the other parent. I think with this, it's really honestly more of a, what can I do? And I think oftentimes it's subconscious, but what can I do to hurt this other person? And if the only thing that you have is the child, unfortunately, sometimes that becomes the weapon. And I really think that a lot of it, there are unresolved relationship issues between the parents. And so the child is just caught in the middle.
Deep. Let's talk about effective ways to implement steps towards conflict resolution. Let's say that two parties have decided to part company for one reason or another, and you've got children in the picture, and those children don't have access to, let's say in this case, the father. What steps should the father take to bridge the gap to be back in his children's life? And what steps should a mother take to try to get a father to be more involved emotionally, not just financially, because we know the courts are pretty stiff on that kind of thing, but, just getting those things back together. suggestions on positive conflict resolution?
Well, I think it comes down to what is the source of the conflict. So I'll give you an example. I've seen situations where everything was fine until the non-custodial parent started dating, or everything was fine until the custodial parent started dating. So before, I think the way we deal with conflict in these scenarios really depends on the source of the conflict. So what I would suggest, and this is with any parent, I would suggest a very detailed plan when everything's going great. And what that means is, like, so let's say, for example, the split came as a result of a divorce. There are so many things that non-custodial parents never think about. One of the biggest sources of contention is moving the child to another place, so far away that the custodial parent does not have direct access quickly to their child. And so one way is to have a conversation. What is it that you would like? What is it that I would like? And what would the child like? Because if they're at a certain age, you really can just ask them, what would you like? How often would you like to do this? And as a unit, come to an agreement. Now that sounds great. It is not easy, especially when you have two people that, again, have an underlying emotional baggage, for lack of a better word. So some things that I would suggest to both parents is to think about the child first. Put the child first. That's number one. The second thing is, what is going to work for the family unit? So, like, for example, nowadays kids are in 1,000 different activities, and then they have school, and then they have some other things. So it may not be feasible to stay with dad Sunday through Wednesday and mom Thursday through Saturday. That just may not be feasible. So come together to determine what's feasible, but also be willing to compromise. Be willing to meet the person in the middle, and make sure that you're putting together a really good plan, not just for your child, but for the family too. You want to make sure that these are all things that that you can do. The sad part, unfortunately, is that from a court's perspective, it is very much skewed against the parents. I was talking with someone. I'm going to be speaking later on in April, and at a dad's forum. And I was speaking with the organizer, and I was telling them that even when you go to self-help websites, even those websites are skewed towards the mother. So there's one, I won't say the name of it, but there's one that tells the mother, even if it says former spouse or ex-husband wants more time with the child, don't do it. It literally says that. It literally says don't do it. And it says don't do it because they may be planning to ask for sole custody. I wasn't shocked because I know that's what happens. So for men, it is vital. It is vital that men have an advocate who can help them really to navigate this, because unfortunately it is set to be anti-dad, and it's so unfortunate. It is just very unfortunate.
What is the attitude of a dad? We're talking primarily to men in the cave. What should be the primary emotional thought that maintains a man through these challenging times where kids are being taken and finances are being divvied up? And what should be the maintaining thought for men who are going through these challenges right now? I
would say really take the time to focus on the prize, and the prize being whatever the outcome is that you're really fighting for. Part of the problem is that for generations, men have been viewed literally just as providers. There was no value attached to any type of nurturing. We're really just one true generation into fathers even really wanting to be involved from a nurturing standpoint. So this is really new. This is a new concept of the stay-at-home dad, or the dad that's present, the present dad, versus just the person who makes sure all the bills are paid and that you make it to college, whatever. So what I would suggest is that you be a little patient and just understand. However, focus on the victory. because what I've seen is that men that continue and they show